Welcome once again to the world of The Witcher. In Part 5 of The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski, Geralt of Rivia faces a tale twisted in fate, where magic, myth, and morality blur. Each encounter draws him closer to truths he'd rather not face, and choices that cut deeper than any sword. Let us know in the comments, what would you have done in Geralt's place? Now, step into the story. The voice of reason. 5. Hey, are you there? He raised his head from the coarse yellowed pages of the History of the World by Roderick de November, an interesting if controversial work which he had been studying since the previous day. Yes, I am. What's happened, Nennig? Do you need me? You've got a guest. Again? Who's it this time? Duke Hereward himself? No. It's Dandelion this time, your fellow. That idler, parasite, and good-for-nothing, that priest of art, the bright shining star of the ballad and love poem. As usual, he's radiant with fame, puffed up like a pig's bladder and stinking of beer. Do you want to see him? Of course. He's my friend, after all. Neniki, peeved, shrugged her shoulders. I can't understand that friendship. He's your absolute opposite. Obviously. There, he's coming, she indicated with her head. Your famous poet? He really is a famous poet, Neniki. Surely you're not going to claim you've never heard his ballads. I've heard them, the priestess winced. Yes, indeed. Well, I don't know much about it, but maybe the ability to jump from touching lyricism to obscenities so easily is a talent. Never mind. Forgive me, but I won't keep you company. I'm not in the mood for either his poetry or his vulgar jokes. A peal of laughter and the strumming of a lute resounded in the corridor, and there, on the threshold of the library, stood Dandelion in a lilac jerkin with lace cuffs, his hat askew. The troubadour bowed exaggeratedly at the sight of Neniki, the heron feather pinned to his hat sweeping the floor. My deepest respects, venerable mother, he whined stupidly. Praise be the great Melitli and her priestess, the springs of virtue and wisdom. Stop talking bullshit, snorted Neniki, and don't call me mother. The very idea that you could be my son fills me with horror. She turned on her heel and left, her trailing robe rustling. Dandelion, aping her, sketched a parody bow. She hasn't changed a bit, he said cheerfully. She still can't take a joke. She's furious because I chatted a bit to the gatekeeper when I got here, a pretty blonde with long lashes and a virgin's plait reaching down to her cute little bottom, which it would be a sin not to pinch. So I did, and Neniki, who had just arrived, "Ah, what the deuce!" "Greetings, Geralt." "Greetings, Dandelion. How did you know I was here?" The poet straightened himself and yanked his trousers up. "I was in Wysium," he said. "I heard about the Striga, and that you were wounded. I guessed where you would come to recuperate. I see you're well now, are you?" "You see correctly, but try explaining that to Neniki. Sit, let's talk." Dandelion sat and peeped into the book lying on the lectern. "History," he smiled. "Roderick de November. I've read him, I have. History was second on my list of favorite subjects when I was studying at the academy in Oxenfurt. What was first?" "Geography," said the poet seriously. The atlas was bigger and it was easier to hide a demijohn of vodka behind it. Geralt laughed dryly, got up, removed Lunan and Tirsa's The Arcane Mysteries of Magic and Alchemy from the shelf, and pulled a round-bellied vessel wrapped in straw from behind the bulky volume and into the light of day. "Oh-ho!" the bard visibly cheered up. "Wisdom and inspiration I see are still to be found in libraries. Ooh, I like this. Plum, isn't it? Yes, this is true alchemy. This is a philosopher's stone, well worth studying. Your health, brother. Oh, it's strong as the plague. What brings you here?" Geralt took the demijohn over from the poet, took a sip and started to cough, fingering his bandaged neck. "Where are you going?" "Nowhere. That is, I could go where you're going. I could keep you company." "Do you intend staying here long?" "Not long. The local duke let it be known I'm not welcome." "Hereward? Dandelion knew all the kings, princes, lords, and feudal lords from Geruga to the Dragon Mountains. Don't you give a damn. He wouldn't dare fall foul of Neneki or Melitil. The people would set fire to his castle. I don't want any trouble, and I've been sitting here for too long anyway. I'm going south, Dandelion, far south. I won't find any work here. Civilization. What the hell do they need a witcher here for? When I ask after employment, they look at me as if I'm a freak. What are you talking about? What civilization? I crossed Buana a week ago and heard all sorts of stories as I rode through the country. Apparently there are water sprites here. Myriapodons, chimera, flying drakes, every possible filth. You should be up to your ears in work. Stories, well, I've heard them too. Half of them are either made up or exaggerated. No, Dandelion, the world is changing. Something's coming to an end. The poet took a long pull at the demijohn, narrowed his eyes, and sighed heavily. Are you crying over your sad fate as a witcher again? And philosophizing on top of that? I perceive the disastrous effects of inappropriate literature because the fact that the world is changing occurred even to that old fart Roderick de Novembre. The changeability of the world is, as it happens, the only thesis in this treatise you can agree with. But it's not so innovative you have to ply me with it and put on the face of a great thinker, which doesn't suit you in the least. Instead of answering, Geralt took a sip from the demijohn. Yes, yes, sighed Dandelion anew. The world is changing, the sun sets, and the vodka is coming to an end. What else, in your opinion, is coming to an end? You mentioned something about endings, philosopher. I'll give you a couple of examples, said Geralt after a moment's silence, all from 2 months this side of the Buena. One day I ride up, and what do I see? A bridge, and under that bridge sits a troll and demands every passerby pays him. Those who refuse have a leg injured, sometimes both. So I go to the alderman. How much will you give me for that troll? He's amazed. What are you talking about, he asks. Who will repair the bridge if the troll's not there? He repairs it regularly with the sweat of his brow. Solid work, first rate. It's cheaper to pay his toll. So I ride on, and what do I see? A forked tail. Not very big, about 4 yards, nose tip to tail tip. It's flying, carrying a sheep in its talons. I go to the village. How much, I ask, will you pay me for the forked tail? The peasants fall on their knees. No, they shout. It's our baron's youngest daughter's favorite dragon. If a scale falls from its back, the baron will burn our hamlet and skin us. I ride on, and I'm getting hungrier and hungrier. I ask around for work. Certainly it's there, but what work? To catch a Ruzzlecala for one man, a nymph for another, a dryad for a third? They've gone completely mad. The villages are teeming with girls, but they want humanoids. Another asks me to kill a Mycopteran and bring him a bone from its hand because crushed and poured into a soup it cures impotence. That's rubbish, interrupted Dandelion. I've tried it. It doesn't strengthen anything, and it makes the soup taste of old socks. But if people believe it and are inclined to pay, I'm not going to kill Mycopterans, nor any other harmless creatures. Then you'll go hungry, unless you change your line of work. To what? Whatever. Become a priest. You wouldn't be bad at it with all your scruples, your morality, your knowledge of people and of everything. The fact that you don't believe in any gods shouldn't be a problem. I don't know many priests who do. Become a priest and stop feeling sorry for yourself. I'm not feeling sorry for myself, I'm stating the facts. Dandelion crossed his legs and examined his worn sole with interest. You remind me, Geralt, of an old fisherman who, toward the end of his life, discovers that fish stink and the breeze from the sea makes your bones ache. Be consistent. Talking and regretting won't get you anywhere. If I were to find that the demand for poetry had come to an end, I'd hang up my lute and become a gardener. I'd grow roses. Nonsense. You're not capable of giving it up. Well, agreed the poet, still staring at his soul, maybe not. But our professions differ somewhat. The demand for poetry and the sound of lute strings will never decline. It's worse with your trade. You witchers, after all, deprive yourselves of work, slowly but surely. The better, and the more conscientiously you work, the less work there is for you. After all, your goal is a world without monsters, a world which is peaceful and safe, a world where witchers are unnecessary. A paradox, isn't it? True. In the past, when unicorns still existed, there was quite a large group of girls who took care of their virtue in order to be able to hunt them. Do you remember? And the rat catchers with pipes? Everybody was fighting over their services, but they were finished off by alchemists and their affected poisons and then domesticated ferrets and weasels. The little animals were cheaper, nicer, and didn't guzzle so much beer. Notice the analogy? I do. So use other people's experiences. The unicorn virgins, when they lost their jobs, immediately popped their cherry. Some, eager to make up for the years of sacrifice, became famous far and wide for their technique and zeal, the rat catchers. Well, you'd better not copy them, because they, to a man, took to drink and went to the dogs. Well, now it looks as if the time's come for witchers. You're reading Roderick de November? As far as I remember, there are mentions of witchers there, of the first ones who started work some 300 years ago, in the days when the peasants used to go to reap the harvest in armed bands, when villages were surrounded by a triple stockade, when merchant caravans looked like the march of regular troops, and loaded catapults stood on the ramparts of the few towns night and day. Because it was us, human beings, who were the intruders here. This land was ruled by dragons, manticores, griffins, and amphisbaenas, vampires and werewolves, striga, kikimoras, chimera, and flying drakes. And this land had to be taken from them, bit by bit. Every valley, every mountain pass, every forest and every meadow. And we didn't manage that without the invaluable help of witchers. But those times have gone, Geralt, irrevocably gone. The Baron won't allow a forktail to be killed because it's the last draconid for 1,000 miles and no longer gives rise to fear, but rather to compassion and nostalgia for times past. The troll under the bridge gets on with people. He's not a monster used to frighten children. He's a relic and a local attraction, and a useful one at that. And chimera, manticores, and amphisbaenas, they dwell in virgin forests and inaccessible mountains. So I was right. Something is coming to an end. Whether you like it or not, something's coming to an end. I don't like you mouthing banal platitudes. I don't like your expression when you do it. What's happening to you? I don't recognize you, Geralt. Ah, plague on it. Let's go south as soon as possible, to those wild countries. As soon as you've cut down a couple of monsters, your blues will disappear. And there's supposed to be a fair number of monsters down there. They say that when an old woman's tired of life, she goes alone and weaponless into the woods to collect brushwood. The consequences are guaranteed. You should go and settle there for good. Maybe I should. But I won't. Why? It's easier for a witcher to make money there. Easier to make money? Geralt took a sip from the demijohn, but harder to spend it. And on top of that, they eat pearl barley and millet. The beer tastes like piss. The girls don't wash and the mosquitoes bite. Dandelion chuckled loudly and rested his head against the bookshelf on the leather-bound volumes. Millet and mosquitoes? That reminds me of our first expedition together to the edge of the world, he said. Men, beauty. Do you remember? We met at the Fay in Gulnate and you persuaded me. You persuaded me? You had to flee from Gulnate as fast as your horse could carry you because the girl you'd knocked up under the musician's podium had 4 sturdy brothers. They were looking for you all over town, threatening to geld you and cover you in pitch and sawdust. That's why you hung on to me then, and you almost jumped out of your pants with joy to have a companion. Until then, you only had your horse for company. But you're right. It was as you say. I did have to disappear for a while, and the Valley of Flowers seemed just right for my purpose. It was, after all, supposed to be the edge of the inhabited world, the last outpost of civilization, the furthest point on the border of two worlds. Remember? The edge of the world. Dandelion came down the steps of the inn carefully, carrying 2 tankards dripping with froth. Cursing under his breath, he squeezed through a group of curious children and crossed the yard at a diagonal, avoiding the cowpats. A number of villagers had already gathered round the table in the courtyard where the Witcher was talking to the alderman. The poet set the tankards down and found a seat. He realized straight away that the conversation hadn't advanced a jot during his short absence. "I'm a Witcher, sir," Geralt repeated for the umpteenth time, wiping beer froth from his lips. "I don't sell anything, I don't go around enlisting men for the army, and I don't know how to treat glanders. I'm a Witcher." "It's a profession," explained Dandelion yet again. "A Witcher, do you understand? He kills strigers and spectres. He exterminates all sorts of vermin, professionally, for money. Do you get it, alderman?" "Aha!" The alderman's brow, deeply furrowed in thought, grew smoother. "A Witcher. You should have said so right away." "Oh, exactly," agreed Geralt. "So now I'll ask you, is there any work to be found around here for me?" The alderman quite visibly started to think again. "Work. Maybe those, well, worthings?" "You're asking, are there any worthings hereabouts?" The Witcher smiled and nodded, rubbing an itching eyelid with his knuckles. "That there are," the alderman concluded after a fair while. "Over yonder, see ye those mountains? There's elves live there. That there is their kingdom. Their palaces, hear ye, are all of pure gold. Oh, aye, sir, elves, I tell ye, 'tis awful. He who yonder goes never returns." "I thought so," said Geralt coldly, "which is precisely why I don't intend going there." Dandelion chuckled impudently. The alderman pondered a long while, just as Geralt had expected. "Aha," he said at last. "Well, aye, but there be other ware things here too. From the land of elves they come, to be sure. Oh, sir, there be many, many. 'Tis hard to count them all. But the worst, that be the bane. Am I right, my good man?" The good men came to life and besieged the table from all sides. "Bane," said one. "Aye, aye, 'tis true what the alderman says. A pale virgin, she walks the cottages at daybreak, and the children, they die. And imps," added another, a soldier from the watchtower. "They tangle up the horses' manes in the stables. And bats, there be bats here. And myriapodons, you come up all in spots because of 'em." The next few minutes passed in a recital of the monsters which plagued the local peasants with their dishonorable doings, or their simple existence. Geralt and Dandelion learned of misguides and mamuans, which prevent an honest peasant from finding his way home in a drunken stupor, of the flying drake which drinks milk from cows, of the head-on spider's legs which runs around in the forest, of hobbles which wear red hats, and about a dangerous pike which tears linen from women's hands as they wash it. And just you wait, and it'll be at the women themselves. They weren't spared hearing that old Nan the hag flies on a broom at night and performs abortions in the day, that the miller tampers with the flour by mixing it with powdered acorns, and that a certain Dudeur believed the royal steward to be a thief and scoundrel. Geralt listened to all this calmly, nodding with feigned interest, and asked a few questions about the roads and layout of the land, after which he rose and nodded to Dandelion. "Well, take care, my good people," he said. "I'll be back soon. Then we'll see what can be done." They rode away in silence alongside the cottages and fences, accompanied by yapping dogs and screaming children. "Geralt," said Dandelion, standing in the stirrups to pick a fine apple from a branch which stretched over the orchard fence, "all the way you've been complaining about it being harder and harder to find work, yet from what I just heard, it looks as if you could work here without break until winter. You'd make a penny or two, and I'd have some beautiful subjects for my ballads. So, explain why we're riding on." "I wouldn't make a penny, Dandelion." "Why? Because there wasn't a word of truth in what they said?" I beg your pardon. None of the creatures they mentioned exist. You're joking. Dandelion spat out a pip and threw the apple core at a patched mongrel. No, it's impossible. I was watching them carefully, and I know people. They weren't lying. No, the Witcher agreed. They weren't lying. They firmly believed it all. Which doesn't change the facts. The poet was silent for a while. None of those monsters. None? It can't be. Something of what they listed must be here. At least one. Admit it. All right, I admit it. One does exist, for sure. Ha? What? A bat. They rode out beyond the last fences, onto a highway between beds yellow with oilseed and cornfields rolling in the wind. Loaded carts traveled past them in the opposite direction. The bard pulled his leg over the saddlebow, rested his lute on his knee, and strummed nostalgic tunes, waving from time to time at the giggling, scantily clad girls wandering along the sides of the road, carrying rakes on their robust shoulders. "Geralt," he said suddenly. "But monsters do exist. Maybe not as many as before, maybe they don't lurk behind every tree in the forest, but they are there. They exist. So how do you account for people inventing ones, then? What's more, believing in what they invent? A famous witcher. Haven't you wondered why?" "I have, famous poet, and I know why. I'm curious. People," Geralt turned his head, "like to invent monsters and monstrosities. Then they seem less monstrous themselves, when they get blind drunk, cheat, steal, beat their wives, starve an old woman, when they kill a trapped fox with an axe or riddle the last existing unicorn with arrows. They like to think that the Bane entering cottages at daybreak is more monstrous than they are. They feel better then. They find it easier to live." "I'll remember that," said Dandelion, after a moment's silence. "I'll find some rhymes and compose a ballad about it." "Do. But don't expect a great applause." They rode slowly but lost the last cottages of the hamlet from sight. Soon they had climbed a row of forested hills. "Ha!" Dandelion halted his horse and looked around. "Look, Geralt, isn't it beautiful here? Idyllic, damn it, a feast for the eyes." The land sloped gently down to a mosaic of flat, even fields picked out in variously colored crops. In the middle, round and regular like a leaf of clover, sparkled the deep waters of 3 lakes, surrounded by dark strips of alder thickets. The horizon was traced by a misty blue line of mountains rising above the black, shapeless stretch of forest. Riding on, Dandelion. The road led straight toward the lakes, alongside dikes and ponds hidden by alder trees and filled with quacking mallards, garganeyes, herons, and grebes. The richness of bird life was surprising alongside the signs of human activity. The dikes were well maintained and covered with fascines, while the sluice gates had been reinforced with stones and beams. The outlet boxes, which were not in the least rotten, trickled merrily with water. Canoes and jetties were visible in the reeds by the lakes, and bars of set nets and fish pots were poking out of the deep waters. Dandelion suddenly looked around. "Someone's following us," he said, excited. "In a cart." "Incredible," scoffed the Witcher without looking around. "In a cart? And I thought that the locals rode on bats." "But do you know what?" growled the troubadour. "The closer we get to the edge of the world, the sharper your wit. I dread to think what it will come to." They weren't riding fast, and the empty cart, drawn by 2 piebald horses, quickly caught up with them. "Here!" The driver brought the horses to a halt just behind them. He was wearing a sheepskin over his bare skin, and his hair reached down to his brows. "The gods be praised, noble sirs." "We too," replied Dandelion, familiar with the custom. "Praise them." "If we want to," murmured the Witcher. "I call myself Nettily," announced the carter. "I was watching ye speak to the alderman at Upper Posada. I know ye tay be a witcher." Geralt let go of the reins and let his mare snort at the roadside nettles. "I did hear," Nettily continued, "the alderman prattle ye stories. I marked your expression, and 'twas nae strange to me. In a long time now I've nae heard such balderdash and lies. Dandelion laughed. Geralt was looking at the peasant attentively, silently. Nettily cleared his throat. "Care ye nay to be hired for real, proper work, sir?" he asked. "There'd be something I have for ye." "And what is that?" Netley didn't lower his eyes. "It be nae good to speak of business on the road. Let us drive on to my home to Lower Posada. There we'll speak. Anyways, 'tis that way ye be headin'." "Why are you so sure?" "As 'cause ye have nae other way here, and your horses' noses be turned in that direction, not their butts." Dandelion laughed again. "What do you say to that, Geralt?" "Nothing," said the Witcher. "It's no good to talk on the road." "On our way, then, honourable Nettily. Tie ye the horses to the frame, and sit yourselves down in the cart," the peasant proposed. "It be more comfortable for ye. Why rack your arses on the saddle?" "Too true." They climbed onto the cart. The Witcher stretched out comfortably on the straw. Dandelion, evidently afraid of getting his elegant green jerkin dirty, sat on the plank. Netley clucked his tongue at the horses, and the vehicle clattered along the beam-reinforced dike. They crossed a bridge over a canal overgrown with water lilies and duckweed and passed a strip of cut meadows. Cultivated fields stretched as far as the eye could see. "It's hard to believe that this should be the edge of the world, the edge of civilization," said Dandelion. "Just look, Geralt. Rye like gold, and a mounted peasant could hide in that corn. Or that oil seed, look how enormous." "You know about agriculture?" "We poets have to know about everything," said Dandelion haughtily. "Otherwise we'd compromise our work. One has to learn, my dear fellow, learn. The fate of the world depends on agriculture, so it's good to know about it. Agriculture feeds, clothes, protects from the cold, provides entertainment, and supports art." "You've exaggerated a bit with the entertainment and art." "And booze, what's that made of?" "I get it. Not very much you don't. Learn. Look at those purple flowers. They're lupins." "These be vetch. To be true," interrupted Netley. "Have ye nae seen lupins, or what? But ye have hit exact with one thing, sir. Everything seeds mightily here, and grows as to make the heart sing. That be why 'tis called the Valley of Flowers. That be why our forefathers settled here, first ridding the land of the elves." "The Valley of Flowers, that's Dol Blathanna." Dandelion nudged the Witcher, who was stretched out on the straw with his elbow. "You paying attention? The elves have gone, but their name remains. Lack of imagination. And how do you get on with the elves here, dear host? You've got them in the mountains across the path, after all. We nae mix with each other, each to his own." "The best solution," said the poet. "Isn't that right, Geralt?" The Witcher didn't reply. "Thank you for the spread." Geralt licked the bone spoon clean and dropped it into the empty bowl. "100 thanks, dear host, and now, if you permit, we'll get down to business." "Well, that we can," agreed Netley. "What say ye done?" Tun, the elder of Lower Posada, a huge man with a gloomy expression, nodded to the girls, who swiftly removed the dishes from the table and left the room, to the obvious regret of Dandelion, who had been grinning at them ever since the feast began and making them giggle at his gross jokes. "I'm listening," said Geralt, looking at the window from where the rapping of an axe and the sound of a saw drifted. Some sort of woodwork was going on in the yard, and the sharp, resinous smell was penetrating the room. "Tell me how I can be of use to you." Netley glanced at Dunn. The elder of the village nodded and cleared his throat. "Well, it be like this," he said. "There be this field hereabouts." Geralt kicked Dandelion, who was preparing to make a spiteful comment, under the table. "A field," continued Dunn. "Be I right, Netley? A long time that field there it lay fallow, but we set it to the plough, and now 'tis on it we sow hemp, hops, and flax. It be a grand piece of field, I tell ye, stretches right up to the forest." "And what?" The poet couldn't help himself. "What's on that field there?" "Well," Dunn raised his head and scratched himself behind the ear. "Well, there be a double prowls there." "What?" snorted Dandelion. "A what?" "I tell ye, a devil." "What devil? What can he be? A devil, and that be, eh?" "Devils don't exist." "Don't interrupt, Dandelion," said Geralt in a calm voice, "and go on, Honourable Dun. I tell ye, it's a devil." "I heard you." Geralt could be incredibly patient when he chose. "Tell me, what does he look like? Where did he come from? How does he bother you?" "One thing at a time, if you please." "Well, oof." Dun raised his gnarled hand and started to count with great difficulty, folding his fingers over one at a time. "One thing at a time." "Forsooth, ye be a wise man. Well, it be like this. He looks, sir, like a devil, for all the world like a devil. Where did he come from? Well, nowhere. Crash, bang, wallop, and there we have him, a devil, and bother us. Forsooth, he doesn't bother us overly. There be times he even helps." "Helps!" cackled Dandelion, trying to remove a fly from his beer. "A devil?" "Don't interrupt, Dandelion. Carry on, Dun, sir. How does he help you, this, as you say?" "Devil," repeated the freeman with emphasis. "Well, this be how he helps. He fertilizes the land. He turns the soil. He gets rid of the moles, scares birds away, watches over the turnips and beetroots. Oh, and he eats the caterpillars, he does. They as do hatch in the cabbages. But the cabbages, he eats them too, forsooth. Nothing but guzzle be what he does. Just like a devil." Dandelion cackled again, then flicked a beer-drenched fly at a cat sleeping by the hearth. The cat opened one eye and glanced at the bard reproachfully. "Nevertheless," the Witcher said calmly, "you're ready to pay me to get rid of him, am I right? In other words, you don't want him in the vicinity." "And who," Dun looked at him gloomily, "would care to have a devil on his birthright soil? This be our land since forever, bestowed upon us by the king, and it has naught to do with the devil. We spit on his help. We've got hands ourselves, have we not? And he, sir, is nae a devil, but a malicious beast, and has got so much, forgive the word, shite in his head, as be hard to bear. There be no knowing what will come into his head. Once he fouled the well, then chased a lass, frightening and threatening to fuck her. He steals, sir, our belongings and victuals. He destroys and breaks things, makes a nuisance of himself, churns the dikes, digs ditches like some muskrat or beaver. The water from one pond trickled out completely, and the carp in it died. He smoked a pipe in the haystack, he did, the son of a whore, and all the hay it went up in smoke." "I see," interrupted Geralt. "So he does bother you?" "Nay." Dun shook his head. "He doesn't bother us. He be simply up to mischief. That's what he be." Dandelion turned to the window, muffling his laughter. The Witcher kept silent. "Or what be there to talk about?" said Netley, who had been silent until then. "Ye be a Witcher, nay? So do ye something about this devil. It be work ye be looking for in Upper Posada. I heard so myself." "So ye have work. We'll pay ye what needs be, but take note, we don't want ye killing the devil. No way." The Witcher raised his head and smiled nastily. "Interesting," he said. "Unusual, I lie." Dun frowned. "An unusual condition. Why all this mercy?" "He should nae be killed." Dun frowned even more. "Because in this valley—" "He should nae, and that be it," interrupted Netley. "Only catch him, sir, or drive him off yon o'er the 7th mountain, and ye will nae be hard done by when ye be paid." The Witcher stayed silent, still smiling. "See it, will ye, the deal?" asked Dun. "First I'd like a look at him, this devil of yours." The freemen glanced at each other. "It be your right," said Netley, then stood up, "and ye well. But the devil he do prowl the whole neighbourhood at night, but at day he dwells somewhere in the hemp or among the old willows on the marshland. Ye can take a look at him there. We won't hasten ye. Ye be wanting rest, then rest as long as ye will. Ye will nae go wanting in comfort and food, as befits the custom of hospitality. Take care." "Geralt," Dandelion jolted up from his stool and looked out into the yard at the freemen walking away from the cottage. I can't understand anything anymore. A day hasn't gone by since our chat about imagined monsters, and you suddenly get yourself hired hunting devils. And everybody, except ignorant freemen obviously, knows that devils are an invention. They're mythical creatures. What's this unexpected zeal of yours supposed to mean? Knowing you a little as I do, I take it you haven't abased yourself so as to get us bed, board, and lodging, have you? Indeed. Geralt grimaced. It does look as if you know me a little, Singer. In that case, I don't understand. What is there to understand? There's no such things as devils, yelled the poet, shaking the cat from sleep once and for all. No such thing. To the devil with it. Devils don't exist. True. Geralt smiled. But Dandelion, I could never resist the temptation of having a look at something that doesn't exist. One thing is certain, muttered the Witcher, sweeping his eyes over the tangled jungle of hemp spreading before them. This devil is not stupid. How did you deduce that? Dandelion was curious. From the fact that he's sitting in an impenetrable thicket, any old hare has enough brains for that. It's a question of the special qualities of hemp. A field of this size emits a strong aura against magic. Most spells will be useless here. And there, look, do you see those poles? Those are hops. Their pollen has the same effect. It's not mere chance. The rascal senses the aura and knows he's safe here. Dandelion coughed and adjusted his breeches. I'm curious. He scratched his forehead beneath his hat. How are you going to go about it, Geralt? I've never seen you work. I take it you know a thing or two about catching devils? I'm trying to recall some ballads. There was one about a devil and a woman, rude but amusing. The woman, you see. Spare me, Dandelion. As you wish. I only wanted to be helpful, that's all. And you shouldn't scorn ancient songs. There's wisdom in them, accumulated over generations. There's a ballad about a farmhand called Slow who... Stop wittering. We have to earn our board and lodging. What do you want to do? Rummage around a bit in the hemp. That's original, snorted the troubadour, though not too refined. And you, how would you go about it? Intelligently? Dandelion sniffed. Craftily. With a hounding, for example, I'd chase the devil out of the thicket, chase him on horseback, in the open field, and lasso him. What do you think of that? Interesting. Who knows, maybe it could be done if you took part, because at least 2 of us are needed for an enterprise like that. But we're not going hunting yet. I want to find out what this thing is, this devil. That's why I'm going to rummage about in the hemp. Eh? The bard had only just noticed. You haven't brought your sword? What for? I know some ballads about devils, too. Neither the woman nor Slow, the farmhand, used a sword. Dandelion looked around. Do we have to squeeze through the very middle of this thicket? You don't have to. You can go back to the village and wait for me. Oh, no, protested the poet, and miss a chance like this? I want to see a devil too, see if he's as terrible as they claim. I was asking if we have to force our way through the hemp when there's a path. Quite right. Geralt shaded his eyes with his hand. There is a path, so let's use it. And what if it's the devil's path? All the better. We won't have to walk too far. You know, Geralt, babbled the bard, following the Witcher along the narrow, uneven path among the hemp, I always thought the devil was just a metaphor invented for cursing. Go to the devil with it, may the devil. Lowlanders say, the devils are bringing us guests, while dwarfs have duvel hoel when they get something wrong, and call poor-blooded livestock devil she-haze. And in the old language there's a saying, a diabelabarsi, which means, I know what it means, you're babbling, Dandelion. Dandelion stopped talking, took off the hat decorated with a heron's feather, fanned himself with it, and wiped his sweaty brow. The humid, stifling heat, intensified by the smell of grass and weeds in blossom, dominated the thicket. The path curved a little, and just beyond the bend ended in a small clearing which had been stamped in the weeds. Look, Dandelion." In the very center of the clearing lay a large, flat stone, and on it stood several clay bowls. Geralt saw some grains of corn and broad beans among the unrecognizable pips and seeds stuck in the flakes of melted fat. "As I suspected," he muttered. "They're bringing him offerings." "That's just it," said the poet, indicating the candle. "And they burn a tallow candle for the devil. They're feeding him seeds, I see, as if he were a finch. Plucked, what a bloody pigsty. Everything here is all sticky with honey and birch tar. What—" The bard's next words were drowned by a loud, sinister bleating. Something rustled and stamped in the hemp. Then the strangest creature Geralt had ever seen emerged from the thicket. The creature was about half a rod tall, with bulging eyes and a goat's horns and beard. The mouth, a soft, busy slit, also brought a chewing goat to mind. Its nether regions were covered with long, thick, dark red hair right down to the cleft hooves. The devil had a long tail ending in a brush-like tassel which wagged energetically. "Ook, ook," barked the monster, stamping his hooves. "What do you want here? Leave, leave, or I'll ram you down." "Ook, has anyone ever kicked your arse, little goat?" Dandelion couldn't stop himself. "Ook, you, B.E., bleated the Goatthorn in agreement, or denial, or simply bleating for the sake of it. "Shut up, Dandelion," growled the Witcher. "Not a word. Blade, blade." The creature gurgled furiously, his lips parting wide to expose yellow, horse-like teeth. "Yuk, yuk, blable, blue, blue, blue. You can take the barrel organ and bell when you go home." "Stop it, damn you," hissed Geralt. "Keep your stupid jokes to yourself." "Jokes?" roared the Goatthorn loudly and leapt up. "Jokes? Huh? New jokers have come, have they? They've brought iron balls, have they? I'll give you iron balls, you scoundrels, you want a joke, do you? Here are some jokes for you. Here are your balls." The creature sprang up and gave a sudden swipe with his hand. Dandelion howled and sat down hard on the path, clasping his forehead. The creature bleated and aimed again. Something whizzed past Geralt's ear. "Here are your balls, Bree." An iron ball, an inch in diameter, thwacked the Witcher in the shoulder, and the next hit Dandelion in the knee. The poet cursed foully and scrambled away, Geralt running after him as balls whizzed above his head. "Buk, buk," screamed the Goatthorn, leaping up and down. "I'll give you balls, you shitty jokers." Another ball whizzed through the air. Dandelion cursed even more foully as he grabbed the back of his head. Geralt threw himself to one side, among the hemp, but didn't avoid the ball that hit him in the shoulder. The Goatthorn's aim was true, and he appeared to have an endless supply of balls. The Witcher, stumbling through the thicket, heard yet another triumphant bleat from the victorious Goatthorn, followed by the whistle of a flying ball, a curse, and the patter of Dandelion's feet scurrying away along the path. And then silence fell. "Well, well, Geralt." Dandelion held a horseshoe he'd cooled in a bucket to his forehead. "That's not what I expected. A horned freak with a goatee like a shaggy billy goat, and he chased you away like some upstart. And I got it in the head. Look at that bump. That's the 6th time you've shown it to me, and it's no more interesting now than it was the first time." "How charming. And I thought I'd be safe with you." "I didn't ask you to traipse after me in the hemp, and I did ask you to keep that foul tongue of yours quiet. You didn't listen, so now you can suffer. In silence, please, because they're just coming." Netley and Dunn walked into the day room. Behind them hobbled a gray-haired old woman, twisted as a pretzel, led by a fair-haired and painfully thin teenage girl. "Honorable Dunn, Honorable Netley," the Witcher began without introduction. "I asked you, before I left, whether you yourselves had already tried to do something with that devil of yours. You told me you hadn't done anything. I've grounds to think otherwise. I await your explanation," the villagers murmured among themselves, after which Dunn coughed into his fist and took a step forward. "You be right, sir. Askin' forgiveness. We lied. It be guilt devours us. We wanted to outwit the double ourselves. For him to go away. By what means? Here in this valley, said Dunn slowly, there be monsters in the past. Flying dragons, earth myriapodons, werbrals, ghosts, gigantic spiders, and various vipers. And all the times we be searching in our great book for a way to deal with all that vermin. What great book? Show the book, old woman. Book, I say. The great book. I'll be on the boil in a minute. Deaf as a doorknob she be. Lil, tell the old woman to show the book. The girl tore the huge book from the taloned fingers of the old woman and handed it to the witcher. In this here great book, continued Dunn, which be in our family clan for time immemorial, be ways to deal with every monster, spell, and wonder in the world that has been, is, or will be. Geralt turned the heavy, thick, greasy, dust-encrusted volume in his hands. The girl was still standing in front of him, wringing her apron in her hands. She was older than he had initially thought. Her delicate figure had deceived him. So different from the robust build of the other girls in the village, he laid the book down on the table and turned its heavy wooden cover. Take a look at this, Dandelion. The first runes, the bard worked out, peering over his shoulder, the horseshoe still pressed to his forehead, the writing used before the modern alphabet, still based on elfin runes and dwarves' ideograms. A funny sentence construction, but that's how they spoke then. Interesting etchings and illuminations. It's not often you get to see something like this, Geralt, and if you do, it's in libraries belonging to temples and not villages at the edge of the world. By all the gods, where did you get that from, dear peasants? Surely you're not going to try to convince me that you can read this, woman. Can you read the first runes? What? The fair-haired girl moved closer to the woman and whispered something into her ear. Read? The crone revealed her toothless gums in a smile. Me? No, sweetheart. 'Tis a skill I've ne'er mastered. Explain to me, said Geralt coldly, turning to Dunn and Netley. How do you use the book if you can't read runes? Always the oldest woman knows what stands written in the book, said Dunn gloomily. And what she knows, she teaches some young one. When 'tis time for her to turn to earth, heed ye yourselves. How 'tis time for our old woman. So our old woman has taken Lil in, and she be teaching her. But for now, 'tis the old woman knows best. The old witch and the young witch, muttered Dandelion. The old woman knows the whole book by heart? Geralt asked with disbelief. Is that right, Grandma? Nay, the whole, oh nay, answered the woman, again through Lil. Only what stands written by the picture. Ah. Geralt opened the book at random. The picture on the torn page depicted a dappled pig with horns in the shape of a lyre. Well then, what's written here? The old woman smacked her lips, took a careful look at the etching, then shut her eyes. The horned aurochs, or Taurus, she recited, erroneously called bison by ignoramuses. It hath horns, and useth them to ram. Enough, very good indeed. The witcher turned several sticky pages. And here, cloud sprites and wind sprites be varied. Some rain pour, some wind roar, and others hurl their thunder. Harvests to protect from them, takest thou a knife of iron, new, of a mouse's droppings, a half-ounce, of a grey heron's fat. Good, well done. And here? What's that? The etching showed a disheveled monstrosity with enormous eyes and even larger teeth, riding a horse. In its right hand, the monstrous being wielded a substantial sword. In its left, a bag of money. A witchman, mumbled the woman. Called by some a witcher. To summon him is most dangerous, albeit one must. For when, against the monster and the vermin there be no aid, the witchman can contrive. But careful one must be. Enough, muttered Geralt. Enough, Grandma. Thank you. No, no, protested Dandelion with a malicious smile. How does it go on? What a greatly interesting book. Go on, Granny, go on. But careful one must be to touch not the witchman, for thus the mange can one acquire. And lassies do from him hide away, for lustful the witchman is above all measure. Quite correct, spot on, laughed the poet, And Leal, so it seemed to Geralt, smiled almost imperceptibly. "Though the witchmen greatly covetous and greedy for gold be," mumbled the old woman, half closing her eyes, "give it ye not such a one more than for a drowner 1 silver penny or 3 halves, for a werecat silver pennies 2, for a plumard 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 silver pennies 2. "Those were the days," muttered the Witcher. "Thank you, Grandma. And now show us where it speaks of the devil and what the book says about devils. This time 'tis grateful I'd be to hear Ethmore, for to learn the ways and means ye did use to deal with him. Most curious am I." "Careful, Geralt," chuckled Dandelion. "You're starting to fall into their jargon. It's an infectious mannerism." The woman, controlling her shaking hands with difficulty, turned several pages. The Witcher and the poet leaned over the table. The etching did, in effect, show the ball-thrower, horned, hairy-tailed, and smiling maliciously. "The devil," recited the woman, "also called willower or sylvan, for livestock and domestic fowl, a tiresome. And great pest is he. Be it your will to chase him from your hamlet, takest thou." "Well, well," murmured Dandelion. "Takest thou of nuts 1 fistful," continued the woman, running her finger along the parchment. "Next takest thou of iron balls a 2nd fistful, of honey an utricle, of birch tar a 2nd, of grey soap a firkin, of soft cheese another. There where the devil dwelleth goes thou when 'tis night, commenceth then to eat the nuts. Anon the devil, who hath great greed, will hasten and ask if they are tasty indeed. Give us to him then the balls of iron." "Damn you," murmured Dandelion. "Pox take." "Quiet," said Geralt. "Well, Grammar, go on." "Having broken his teeth he will be attentive as thou eatest the honey. Of said honey will he himself desire. Givest him of birch tar, then yourself eatest soft cheese. Soon, hearest thou, will the devil grumbleth and tumbleth, but makest of it as naught. Yet, if the devil desireth soft cheese, givest him soap. For soap the devil withstandeth not." "You got to the soap?" interrupted Geralt with a stony expression, turning toward Dun and Netley. "In no way," groaned Netley. "If only we had got to the balls. But he gave us what for when he bit a ball? And who told you to give him so many?" Dandelion was enraged. "It stands written in the book, 1 fistful to take, yet ye gave us of balls a sackful. Ye furnished him with ammunition for 2 years, the fools ye be." "Careful," the Witcher smiled. "You're starting to fall into their jargon." There's a glitter in her eyes. "It's infectious." "Thank you." Geralt suddenly raised his head and looked into the eyes of the girl standing by the woman. Leal didn't lower her eyes. They were pale and wildly blue. "Why are you bringing the devil offerings in the form of grain?" he asked sharply. "After all, it's obvious that he's a typical herbivore." Leal didn't answer. "I asked you a question, girl. Don't be frightened. You won't get the mange by talking to me." "Don't ask her anything, sir," said Netley, with obvious unease in his voice. "Leal, she be strange. She won't answer you. Don't force her." Geralt kept looking into Leal's eyes, and Leal still met his gaze. He felt a shiver run down his back and creep along his shoulders. "Why didn't you attack the devil with stanchions and pitchfork?" He raised his voice. "Why didn't you set a trap for him? If you'd wanted to, his goat's head would already be spiked on a pole to frighten crows away. You warned me not to kill him. Why? You forbade it, didn't you, Leal?" Dun got up from the bench. His head almost touched the beams. "Leave, lass," he growled. "Take the old woman and leave." "Who is she, Honorable Dun?" the Witcher demanded as the door closed behind Lil and the woman. "Who is that girl? Why does she enjoy more respect from you than that bloody book?" "It be nae your business." Dun looked at him, and there was no friendliness in his eyes. "Persecute wise women in your own town. Burn stakes in your own land. There has been none of it here, nor will there be." "You didn't understand me," said the Witcher coldly. "Because I did nae try," growled Dun. "Noticed," Geralt said through his teeth, making no effort to be cordial. "But be so gracious as to understand something, Honorable Dun. We have no agreement. I haven't committed myself to you in any way. You have no reason to believe that you've bought yourself a witcher who, for a silver penny or 3 halves, will do what you can't do yourselves, or don't want to do, or aren't allowed to. No, Honorable Dun, you have not bought yourself a witcher yet, and I don't think you'll succeed in doing so, not with your reluctance to understand." Dun remained silent, measuring Geralt with a gloomy stare. Netley cleared his throat and wriggled on the bench, shuffling his rag sandals on the dirt floor, then suddenly straightened up. "Witcher, sir," he said, "do nae be enraged. We will tell ye what and how." "Dun?" The elder of the village nodded and sat down. "As we be riding here," began Netley, "ye did notice how everything here grows, the great harvests we have. There be nae many places ye see all grow like this, if there be any such. Seedlings and seeds be so important to us that 'tis with them we pay our levies, and we sell them and use them to barter. What's that got to do with the devil? The dull voice want to make a nuisance of himself and play silly tricks, and then he be starting to steal a great deal of grain. At the beginning we be bringing him a little to the stone in the hemp, thinking his fill he'd eat and leave us in peace. Naught of it. With a vengeance he went on stealing, and when we started to hide our supplies in shops and sheds, well locked and bolted, 'tis furious he grew, sir. He roared, bleated, "You could you call?" And when he goes, "You do best to run for your life." He threatened to screw. Dandelion threw in with a ribald smile. "That, too," agreed Netley. "Oh, and he mentioned a fire. Talk long as we may, he could nae steal, so 'tis levies he demanded. He ordered grain and other goods be brought him by the sackful. Riled we were then, and intending to beat his tailed arse. But," the freeman cleared his throat and lowered his head, "ye need nae beat about the bush," said Dun suddenly. "We judged the Witcher wrong. Tell him everything, Netley." "The old woman forbade us to beat the devil," said Netley quickly, "but we know 'tis Lil, because the woman only says what Lil tell her to, and ye know yourself, sir, we listen." "I've noticed." Geralt twisted his lips in a smile. "The woman can only waggle her chin and mumble a text which she doesn't understand herself. And you stare at the girl with gaping mouths, as if she were the statue of a goddess. You avoid her eyes, but try to guess her wishes, and her wishes are your command. Who is this Lil of yours? But ye have guessed that, sir, a prophetess, a wise one. But say naught of this to anyone, we ask ye, if word were to get to the steward, or, God's forbid, to the viceroy." "Don't worry," said Geralt seriously. "I know what that means, and I won't betray you." The strange women and girls, called prophetesses or wise ones, who could be found in villages, didn't enjoy the favor of those noblemen who collected levies and profited from farming. Farmers always consulted prophetesses on everything, and believed them, blindly and boundlessly. Decisions based on their advice were often completely contrary to the politics of lords and overlords. Geralt had heard of incomprehensible decrees, the slaughter of entire pedigree herds, the cessation of sowing or harvesting, and even the migration of entire villages. Local lords therefore opposed the superstition, often brutally, and freemen very quickly learned to hide the wise ones. But they didn't stop listening to their advice, because experience proved the wise ones were always right in the long run. "Lil did not permit us to kill the devil," continued Netley. "She told us to do what the book says. As ye well know, it did nae work out. There has already been trouble with the steward. If we give less grain in levy than be normal, 'tis ball he will shout and fulminate. Thus we have nae even squeak to him of the devil, the reason being the steward be ruthless and knows cruelly little about jokes. And then ye happened along." We asked Lil if we could hire ye. "Ale," he said, through the woman, "that she need first of all to look at ye. And she did. That she did, and accepted ye she has, that we know. We can tell what Neil accepts and what she doesn't. He never said a word to me. She ne'er has spoken word to anyone, save the old woman. But if she had not accepted ye, she would nae have entered the room for all in the world." Geralt reflected. "That's interesting. A prophetess who, instead of prophesying, doesn't say a word. How did she come to be among you?" "We nae know, witchers, sir," muttered Dun. "But as for the old woman, so the older folk remember it be like this. The old woman afore her took a close-tongued girl under her wing too, one as which came from no one knows. And that girl she be our old woman. My grandfather would say the old woman be reborn that way, like the moon she be reborn in the sky, and ever new she be." Do nae laugh. "I'm not laughing." Geralt shook his head. "I've seen too much to laugh at things like that. Nor do I intend to poke my nose into your affairs, Honorable Dunn. My questions aim to establish the bond between Lily and the devil. You've probably realized yourselves that one exists. So, if you're anxious to be on good terms with your prophetess, then I can give you only one way to deal with the devil. You must get to like him." "Know ye, sir," said Natalie, "it be nae only a matter of the devil. Leal does nae let us harm anything, any creature." "Of course," Dandelion butted in. "Country prophetesses grow from the same tree as druids, and a druid will go so far as to wish the gadfly sucking his blood to enjoy its meal." "You hits it on the head," Natalie faintly smiled. "Ye hits the nail right on the head. 'Twas the same with us and the wild boars that dug up our vegetable beds. Look out the window, beds as pretty as a picture. We have found a way. Leal doesn't even know. What the eyes do nae see, the heart will nae miss. Understand?" "I understand," muttered Geralt. "And how? But we can't move forward. Leal or no Leal, your devil is a Sylvan, an exceptionally rare but intelligent creature. I won't kill him. My code doesn't allow it." "If he be intelligent," said Dunn, "go speak reason to him." "Just so," Natalie joined in. "If the devil has brains, that will mean he steals grain according to reason. So ye witcher find out what he wants. He doesna eat that grain after all. Not so much, at least. So what does he want grain for? To spite us? What does he want? Find out and chase him off in some witcher way. Will ye do that?" "I'll try," decided Geralt. But what? Your book, my friends, is out of date. Do you see what I'm getting at?" "Well, forsooth," grunted Dunn. "Not really. I'll explain. Honorable Dunn, Honorable Natalie, if you're counting on my help costing you a silver penny or 3 halves, then you are bloody well mistaken." "Hey!" A rustle, an angry yuk, yuk, and the snapping of stakes reached them from the thicket. "Hey!" repeated the witcher, prudently remaining hidden. "Show yourself, Willower." "Willower yourself. So what is it?" "Devil?" "Devil yourself." The Sylvan poked his head out from the hemp, baring his teeth. "What do you want?" "To talk. Are you making fun of me or what? Do you think I don't know who you are? The peasants hired you to throw me out of here, eh?" "That's right," admitted Geralt indifferently. "And that's precisely what I wanted to chat to you about. What if we were to come to an understanding?" "That's where it hurts," bleated the Sylvan. "You'd like to get off lightly, wouldn't you, without making an effort, eh? Pull the other one. Life, my good man, means competition. The best man wins. If you want to win with me, prove you're the best. Instead of coming to an understanding, we'll have competitions. The winner dictates the conditions. I propose a race from here to the Old Willow on the dike." "I don't know where the dike is, or the Old Willow." "I wouldn't suggest the race if you knew. I like competitions, but I don't like losing. I've noticed. No, we won't race each other. It's very hot today. pity. So maybe we'll pit ourselves against each other in a different way? The Sylvan bared his yellow teeth and picked up a large stone from the ground. Do you know the game who shouts loudest? I shout first, close your eyes. I have a different proposition. I'm all ears. You leave here without any competitions, races, or shouting, of your own accord without being forced. You can shove such a proposition a deal of arse. The devil demonstrated his knowledge of the old language. I won't leave here. I like it here. But you've made too much of a nuisance of yourself here. Your pranks have gone too far. Du Velshis to you with my pranks. The Sylvan, as it turned out, also knew the dwarves' tongue, and your proposition is also worth as much as a Du Velshis. I'm not going anywhere unless you beat me at some game. Shall I give you a chance? We'll play at riddles, if you don't like physical games. I'll give you a riddle in a minute, and if you guess it, you win and I leave. If you don't, I stay and you leave. Rack your brains, because the riddle isn't easy. Before Geralt could protest, the Sylvan bleated, stamped his hooves, whipped the ground with his tail, and recited, It grows in soft clay not far from the stream, little pink leaves, pods, small and full. It grows in soft clay not far from the stream, on a long stalk. Its flower is moist, but to a cat please show it not, 'cause if you do, he'll eat the lot. Well, what is it? Guess. I haven't the faintest idea, the Witcher said, not even trying to think it over. Sweet pea, perhaps? Wrong. You lose. And what is the correct answer? What has moist pods? Habit. Listen, growled Geralt. You're starting to get on my nerves. I warned you, chuckled the Sylvan, that the riddle wasn't easy. Tough. I won, I stay, and you leave. I wish you, sir, a cold farewell. Just a moment. The Witcher surreptitiously slipped a hand into his pocket. And my riddle? I have the right to a revenge match, haven't I? No, protested the devil. I might not guess it after all. Do you take me for a fool? No. Geralt shook his head. I take you for a spiteful, arrogant dope. We're going to play quite a new game shortly, one which you don't know. Ha, after all. What game? The game is called, said the Witcher slowly, Don't do unto others what you would not have them do to you. You don't have to close your eyes. Geralt stooped in a lightning throw. The 1-inch iron ball whizzed sharply through the air and thwacked the Sylvan straight between the horns. The creature collapsed onto his back as if hit by a thunderbolt. Geralt dived between the poles and grabbed him by one shaggy leg. The Sylvan bleated and kicked. The Witcher sheltered his head with his arm, but to little effect. The Sylvan, despite his mean posture, kicked with the strength of an enraged mule. The Witcher tried and failed to catch a kicking hoof. The Sylvan flapped, thrashed his hands on the ground, and kicked him again in the forehead. The Witcher cursed, feeling the Sylvan's legs slip from his fingers. Both, having parted, rolled in opposite directions, kicked the poles with a crash, and tangled themselves up in the creeping hemp. The Sylvan was the first to jump up, and lowering his horned head, charged. But Geralt was already on his feet and effortlessly dodged the attack, grabbed the creature by a horn, tugged hard, threw him to the ground, and crushed him with his knees. The Sylvan bleated and spat straight into the Witcher's eyes like a camel suffering from excess saliva. The Witcher instinctively stepped back without releasing the devil's horns. The Sylvan, trying to toss his head, kicked with both hooves at once and strangely hit the mark with both. Geralt swore nastily but didn't release his grip. He pulled the Sylvan up, pinned him to the creaking poles, and kicked him on a shaggy knee with all his might. Then he leaned over and spat right into his ear. The Sylvan howled and snapped his blunt teeth. Don't do unto others, panted the Witcher, what you would not have them do to you. Shall we play? The Sylvan gurgled, howled, and spat fiercely, but Geralt held him firmly by the horns and pressed his head down hard, making the spittle hit the Sylvan's own hooves, which tore at the ground, sending up clouds of dust and weeds. The next few minutes passed in an intense skirmish, an exchange of insults and kicks. If Geralt was pleased about anything, it was only that nobody could see him, for it was a truly ridiculous sight. The force of the next kick tore the combatants apart and threw them in opposite directions into the hemp thicket. The Sylvan got up before the Witcher and rushed to escape, limping heavily. Geralt, panting and wiping his brow, rushed in pursuit. They forced their way through the hemp and ran into the hops. The Witcher heard the pounding of a galloping horse, the sound he'd been waiting for. "Here, Dandelion, here!" he yelled. "In the hops!" He saw the mount breast right in front of him and was knocked over. He bounced off the horse as though it were a rock and tumbled onto his back. The world darkened. He managed to roll to the side, behind the hop poles, to avoid the hooves. He sprung up nimbly, but another rider rode into him, knocking him down again. Then suddenly someone threw themselves at him and pinned him to the ground. Then there was a flash and a piercing pain in the back of his head. And darkness. There was sand on his lips. When he tried to spit it out, he realized he was lying face down on the ground, and he was tied up. He raised his head a little and heard voices. He was lying on the forest floor by a pine tree. Some 20 paces away stood unsaddled horses. Her hips were wrapped around with a colored shawl which reached halfway down her thighs. "Qui glos?" she asked, looking at the Witcher and playing with the hilt of the long dagger in her belt. "Qu'elin pavien eli?" "Nelly," he contested. "Ten pavien et sedit. Do you hear?" The elf turned to her companion, the tall Sadie, who, not bothering to check Geralt's knots, was strumming away at Gamdillion's lute with an expression of indifference on his long face. "Did you hear, Vanadine? The ape-man can talk. He can even be impertinent." Scythe shrugged, making the feathers decorating his jacket rustle. "All the more reason to gag him, Torviel." The elf leaned over Geralt. She had long lashes, an unnaturally pale complexion, and parched, cracked lips. She wore a necklace of carved golden birch pieces on a thong, wrapped around her neck several times. "Well, say something else, ape-man," she hissed. "We'll see what your throat so used to barking is capable of." "What's this? Do you need an excuse to hit a bound man?" The Witcher turned over on his back with an effort and spat out the sand. "Hit me without any excuses. I've seen how you like it. Let off some steam." The elf straightened. "I've already let off some steam on you while your hands were free," she said. "I rode you down and swiped you on the head, and I'll also finish you off when the time comes." He didn't answer. "I'd much rather stab you from close up, looking you in the eyes," continued the elf. "But you stink most hideously, human, so I'll shoot you as you wish." The Witcher shrugged, as far as the knots let him. "Do as you like, noble Ainside. You shouldn't miss a tied-up, motionless target." The elf stood over him, legs spread, and leaned down, flashing her teeth. "No, I shouldn't," she hissed. "I hit whatever I want, but you can be sure you won't die from the first arrow, or the second. I'll try to make sure you can feel yourself dying." "Don't come so close," he grimaced, pretending to be repulsed. "You stink most hideously, Ainside." The elf jumped back, rocked on her narrow hips, and forcefully kicked him in the thigh. Geralt drew his legs in and curled up, knowing where she was aiming next. He succeeded and got her boot in the hip so hard his teeth rattled. The tall elf standing next to her echoed each kick with a sharp chord on the lute. "Leave him, Toroville," bleated the Sylvan. "Have you gone mad? Galar, tell her to stop." "Easy," shrieked Toroville, and kicked the Witcher again. The tall scythe tore so violently at the strings that one snapped with a protracted whine. "Enough of that. Enough, for God's sake," Dandelion yelled fretfully, wriggling and tumbling in the ropes. "Why are you bullying him, you stupid whore? Leave us alone, and you leave my lute alone, all right?" Toroville turned to him with an angry grimace on her cracked lips. "Musician?" she growled. "A human, yet a musician. A lutenist without a word." She pulled the instrument from the tall elf's hand, forcefully smashed the lute against the pine, and threw the remains tangled in the strings on Dandilion's chest. "Play on a cow's horn, you savage, not a lute." The poet turned as white as death. His lips quivered. Geralt, feeling cold fury rising up somewhere within him, drew Torvald's eyes with his own. "What are you staring at?" hissed the elf, leaning over. "Filthy ape-man! Do you want me to gouge out those insect eyes of yours?" Her necklace hung down just above him. The Witcher tensed, lunged, and caught the necklace in his teeth, tugging powerfully, curling his legs in and turning on his side. Torvald lost her balance and fell on top of him. Geralt wriggled in the ropes like a fish, crushed the elf beneath him, tossed his head back with such force that the vertebrae in his neck cracked, and with all his might butted her in the face with his forehead. Torvald howled and struggled. They pulled him off her brutally and, tugging at his clothes and hair, lifted him. One of them struck him. He felt rings cut the skin over his cheekbone, and the forest danced and swam in front of his eyes. He saw Torvald lurch to her knees, blood pouring from her nose and mouth. The elf wrenched the dagger from its sheath, but gave a sob, hunched over, grasped her face, and dropped her head between her knees. The tall elf in the jacket adorned with colorful feathers took the dagger from her hand and approached the Witcher. He smiled as he raised the blade. Geralt saw him through a red haze. Blood from his forehead, which he'd cut against Torvald's teeth, poured into his eye sockets. "No!" bleated Tork, running up to the elf and hanging onto his arm. "Don't kill him! No!" "Vola, Vanadine!" a sonorous voice suddenly commanded. "Quesain! Calum! Evelian! Galar!" Geralt turned his head as far as the fist clutching his hair permitted. The horse, which had just reached the glade, was as white as snow, its mane long, soft, and silky as a woman's hair. The hair of the rider sitting in the sumptuous saddle was identical in color, pulled back at the forehead by a bandana studded with sapphires. Tork, bleeding now and then, ran up to the horse, caught hold of the stirrup, and showered the white-hailed elf with a torrent of words. The Sede interrupted him with an authoritative gesture and jumped down from his saddle. He approached Torvald, who was being supported by two elves, and carefully removed the bloodied handkerchief from her face. Torvald gave a heart-rending groan. The Sede shook his head and approached the Witcher. His burning black eyes, shining like stars in his pale face, had dark rings beneath them, as if he had not slept for several nights in a row. "You stink even when bound," he said quietly in unaccented common tongue, "like a basilisk. I'll draw my conclusions from that." "Torvald started it," bleated the devil. "She kicked him when he was tied up, as if she'd lost her mind." With a gesture, the elf ordered him to be quiet. At his command, the other Side dragged the Witcher and Dandelion under the pine tree and fastened them to the trunk with belts. Then they all knelt by the prostrate Torvald, sheltering her. After a moment, Geralt heard her yell and fight in their arms. "I didn't want this," said the Sylvan, still standing next to them. I didn't know they'd arrived just when they stunned you and tied your companion up. I asked them to leave you there in the hops, but they couldn't leave any witnesses," muttered the Witcher. "Surely they won't kill us, will they?" groaned Dandelion. "Surely they won't." Tork said nothing, wiggling his soft nose. "Bloody hell," the poet groaned. "They're going to kill us? What's all this about, Geralt? What did we witness? Our sylvan friend is on a special mission in the Valley of Flowers. Am I right, Tork? At the elves' request, he's stealing seeds, seedlings, knowledge about farming. What else, devil?" "Whatever I can," bleated Tork. "Everything they need. And show me something they don't need. They're starving in the mountains, especially in winter, and they know nothing about farming. And before they've learned to domesticate game or poultry and to cultivate what they can in their plots of land, they haven't got the time, human. I don't care a shit about their time." "What have I done to them?" groaned Dandelion. "What wrong have I done them?" "Think carefully," said the white-hailed elf, approaching without a sound, "and maybe you can answer the question yourself. He's simply taking revenge for all the wrong that man has done the elves." The Witcher smiled wryly. It's all the same to him who he takes his revenge on. Don't be deluded by his noble bearing and elaborate speech, Dandelion. He's no different than the Black Eyes who knocked us down. He has to unload his powerless hatred on somebody. The elf picked up Dandelion's shattered lute. For a moment he looked at the ruined instrument in silence and finally threw it into the bushes. If I wanted to give vent to hatred or a desire for revenge, he said, playing with a pair of soft white leather gloves, I'd storm the valley at night, burn down the village and kill the villagers. Childishly simple. They don't even put out a guard. They don't see or hear us when they come to the forest. Can there be anything simpler, anything easier than a swift, silent arrow from behind a tree? But we're not hunting you. It is you, man with strange eyes, who is hunting our friend, the Sylvan Torque. That's exaggerate, bleated the devil. What hunt? We were having a bit of fun. It is you humans who hate anything that differs from you, be it only by the shape of its ears. The elf went on calmly, paying no attention to the Sylvan. That's why you took our land from us, drove us from our homes, forced us into the savage mountains. You took our Dol Blathana, the Valley of Flowers. I am Filavandrel Ain Fidhail of Silver Towers, of the Filiorn family, from White Ships. Now, exiled and hounded to the edge of the world, I am Filavandrel of the edge of the world. The world is huge, muttered the Witcher. We can find room. There's enough space. The world is huge, repeated the elf. That's true, human. But you have changed this world. At first you used force to change it. You treated it as you treat anything that falls into your hands. Now it looks as if the world has started to fit in with you. It's given way to you. It's given in. Geralt didn't reply. Torque spoke the truth, continued Filavandrel. Yes, we are starving. Yes, we are threatened with annihilation. The sun shines differently. The air is different. Water is not as it used to be. The things we used to eat, made use of, are dying, diminishing, deteriorating. We never cultivated the land. Unlike you humans, we never tore at it with hoes and plows. To you, the earth pays a bloody tribute. It bestowed gifts on us. You tear the earth's treasures from it by force. For us, the earth gave birth and blossomed because it loved us. Well, no love lasts forever, but we still want to survive. Instead of stealing grain, you can buy it, as much as you need. You still have a great many things that humans consider valuable. You can trade. Filavandrel smiled contemptuously. With you? Never. Geralt frowned, breaking up the dried blood on his cheek. The devil with you, then, and your arrogance and contempt. By refusing to cohabit, you're condemning yourselves to annihilation. To cohabit, to come to an understanding, that's your only chance. Filavandrel leaned forward, his eyes blazing. Cohabit on your terms? He asked in a changed, yet still calm voice. Acknowledging your sovereignty? Losing our identity? Cohabit as what? Slaves? Pariahs? Cohabit with you from beyond the walls you've built to fence yourselves away in towns? Cohabit with your women and hang for it? Or look on at what half-blood children must live with? Why are you avoiding my eyes, strange human? How do you find cohabiting with neighbors from whom, after all, you do differ somewhat? I manage. The Witcher looked him straight in the eyes. I manage because I have to, because I've no other way out, because I've overcome the vanity and pride of being different. I've understood that they are a pitiful defense against being different, because I've understood that the sun shines differently when something changes, but I'm not the axis of those changes. The sun shines differently, but it will continue to shine, and jumping at it with a hoe isn't going to do anything. We've got to accept facts, Elf. That's what we've got to learn. That's what you want, isn't it? With his wrist, Filavandrel wiped away the sweat above his white brows. Is that what you want to impose on others, the conviction that your time has come, your human era and age, and that what you're doing to other races is as natural as the rising and the setting of the sun, that everybody has to come to terms with it, to accept it? You accuse me of vanity? And what are the views you're proclaiming? Why don't you humans finally realize that your domination of the world is as natural and repellent as lice multiplying in a sheepskin coat? You could propose we cohabit with lice and get the same reaction, and I'd listen to the lices attentively if they, in return for our acknowledgement of their supremacy, were to agree to allow common use of the coat. So don't waste time discussing it with such an unpleasant insect, elf, said the Witcher, barely able to control his voice. I'm surprised you want to arouse a feeling of guilt and repentance in such a louse as me. You're pitiful, Filavandrel. You're embittered, hungry for revenge, and conscious of your own powerlessness. Go on, thrust the sword into me. Revenge yourself on the whole human race. You'll see what relief that'll bring you. First kick me in the balls or the teeth, like Toruvil. Filavandrel turned his head. Toruvil is sick, he said. I know that disease and its symptoms. Geralt spat over his shoulder. The treatment I gave her ought to help. This conversation is senseless. Filavandrel stepped away. I'm sorry we've got to kill you. Revenge has nothing to do with it. It's purely practical. Torque has to carry on with his task, and no one can suspect who he's doing it for. We can't afford to go to war with you, and we won't be taken in by trade and exchange. We're not so naive that we don't know your merchants are just outposts of your way of life. We know what follows them, and what sort of cohabitation they bring. Elf Dandelion, who had remained silent until now, said quietly, I've got friends, people who'll pay ransom for us, in the form of provisions, if you like, or any form. Think about it. After all, those stolen seeds aren't going to save you. Nothing will save them anymore. Geralt interrupted him. Don't grovel, Dandelion. Don't beg him. It's pointless and pitiful. For someone who has lived such a short time, Filavandrel forced a smile. You show an astounding disdain for death, human. Your mother gives birth to you only once, and only once do you die, the Witcher said calmly. An appropriate philosophy for a louse, don't you agree? I pity you, Filavandrel. The elf raised his eyebrows. Why? You're pathetic, with your little stolen sacks of seeds on pack horses, with your handful of grain, that tiny crumb thanks to which you plan to survive, and with that mission of yours which is supposed to turn your thoughts from imminent annihilation, because you know this is the end. Nothing will sprout or yield crops on the plateau. Nothing will save you now, but you live long, and you will live very long in arrogant isolation. Fewer and fewer of you, growing weaker and weaker, more and more bitter. And you know what'll happen then, Filavandrel. You know that desperate young men with the eyes of 100-year-old men and withered, barren, and sick girls like Toruvil will lead those who can still hold a sword and bow in their hands down into the valleys. You'll come down into the blossoming valleys to meet death, wanting to die honorably, in battle, and not in sick beds of misery where anemia, tuberculosis, and scurvy will send you. Then, long-living Ain Seidi, you'll remember me. You'll remember that I pitied you, and you'll understand that I was right. Time will tell who was right, said the elf quietly, and herein lies the advantage of longevity. I've got a chance of finding out, if only because of that stolen handful of grain. You won't have a chance like that. You'll die shortly. Geralt indicated Dandelion with his head. No, not out of lofty mercy, out of common sense. Nobody's going to ask after me, but they are going to take revenge for him. You judge my common sense poorly, the elf said after some hesitation. If he survives thanks to you, he'll undoubtedly feel obliged to avenge you. You can be sure of that, Dandelion burst out, pale as death. You can be sure, you son of a bitch. Kill me too, because I promise Otherworld against you. You'll see what lice from a fur coat can do. We'll finish you off even if we have to level those mountains of yours to the ground. You can be sure of that. Oh, stupid you are, Dandelion, sighed the Witcher. Your mother gives birth to you only once, and only once do you die, said the poet haughtily, the effect somewhat spoiled by his teeth rattling like castanets. That settles it. Filavandrel took his gloves from his belt and pulled them on. It's time to end this. At his command, the elves positioned themselves opposite Geralt and Dandelion with bows. They did it quickly. They'd obviously been waiting for this a long time. One of them, the Witcher noticed, was still chewing a turnip. Toriliul, her mouth and nose bandaged with cloth and birch bark, stood next to the archers, without a bow. "Shall I bind your eyes?" asked Filavandrel. "Go away." The Witcher turned his head. "Go." "A duable pars," Dandelion finished for him, his teeth chattering. "Oh no," the Sylvan suddenly bleated, running up and sheltering the condemned men with his body. "Have you lost your mind, Filavandrel? This is not what we agreed. Not this. You were supposed to take them up to the mountains, hold them somewhere in some cave until we'd finished. Torque," he said, the elf. I can't risk it. Did you see what he did to Toruvio while tied up? I can't risk it. I don't care what you can or can't. What do you imagine? You think I'll let you murder them? Here, on my land, right next to my hamlet? You accursed idiots, get out of here with your bows or I'll ram you down. Yoke. Torque. Filavandrel rested his hands on his belt. This is necessary. Duvelte's not necessary. Move aside, Torque. The Sylvan shook his ears, bleated even louder, stared and bent his elbow in an abusive gesture popular among dwarves. You're not going to murder anybody here. Get on your horses and out into the mountains, beyond the passes. Otherwise you'll have to kill me too. Be reasonable, said the white-hailed elf slowly. If we let them live, people are going to learn what you're doing. They'll catch you and torture you. You know what they're like. After all, I do, bleated the Sylvan, still sheltering Geralt and Dandelion. It turns out I know them better than I know you. And verily I don't know who to side with. I regret allying myself with you, Filavandrel. You wanted to, said the elf coldly, giving a signal to the archers. You wanted to talk. Lesperalian, Evelian. The elves drew arrows from their quivers. Go away, talk, said Geralt, gritting his teeth. It's senseless. Get aside. The Sylvan, without budging from the spot, showed him the dwarf's gesture. I can hear. Music. Dandelion suddenly sobbed. It happens, said the Witcher, looking at the arrowheads. Don't worry. There's no shame in fear. Filavandrel's face changed, screwed up in a strange grimace. The white-hailed scythe suddenly turned round and gave a shout to the archers. They lowered their weapons. Lily entered the glade. She was no longer a skinny peasant girl in a sackcloth dress. Through the grasses covering the glade floated a queen, radiant, golden-haired, fiery-eyed, ravishing. The queen of the fields, decorated with garlands of flowers, ears of corn, bunches of herbs. At her left-hand side, a young stag pattered on stiff legs. At her right rustled an enormous hedgehog. Donna Maidbath, said Filavandrel with veneration, and then bowed and knelt. The remaining elves also knelt. Slowly, reluctantly, they fell to their knees one after the other and bowed their heads low in veneration. Turlvil was the last to kneel. Chael Denamed, repeated Filavandrel. Lily didn't answer. She stopped several paces short of the elf and swept her blue eyes over Dandelion and Geralt. Torque, while bowing, started cutting through the knots. None of the Sede moved. Lil stood in front of Filavandrel. She didn't say anything, didn't make the slightest sound, but the Witcher saw the changes on the elf's face, sensed the aura surrounding them, and was in no doubt they were communicating. The devil suddenly pulled at his sleeve. Your friend, he bleated quietly, has decided to faint. Right on time. What shall we do? Slap him across the face a couple of times. Their pleasure. Filavandrel got up from his knees. At his command, the elves fell to saddling the horses as quick as lightning. Come with us, Dana Maidmeet, said the white-hailed elf. We need you. Don't abandon us, Eternal One. Don't deprive us of your love. We'll die without it. Leal slowly shook her head and indicated east. the direction of the mountains. The elf bowed, crumpling the ornate reins of his white-maned mount in his hands. Dandelion walked up, pale and dumbfounded, supported by the Sylvan. Leal looked at him and smiled. She looked into the Witcher's eyes. She looked long. She didn't say a word. Words weren't necessary. Most of the elves were already in their saddles when Filavandrel and Torville approached. Elf looked into the elf's black eyes, visible above the bandages. "Torville," he said, and didn't finish. The elf nodded. From her saddle-bow she took a lute, a marvelous instrument of light, tastefully inlaid wood with a slender engraved neck. Without a word she handed the lute to Dandelion. The poet accepted the instrument and smiled. Also without a word, but his eyes said a great deal. "Farewell, strange human." Filavandrel said quietly to "You're right. Words aren't necessary. They won't change anything." Geralt remained silent. "After some consideration," added the Sade, "I've come to the conclusion that you were right when you pitied us. So, goodbye. Goodbye until we meet again, on the day when we descend into the valleys to die honorably. We'll look out for you then, Torville and I. Don't let us down." For a long time they looked at each other in silence, and then the Witcher answered briefly and simply, "I'll try, by the gods, Geralt." Dandelion stopped playing, hugged the lute, and touched it with his cheek. "This wood sings on its own. These strings are alive. What wonderful tonality. Bloody hell. A couple of kicks and a bit of fear is a pretty low price to pay for such a superb lute. I'd have let myself be kicked from dawn to dusk if I'd known what I was going to get. Geralt, are you listening to me at all? It's difficult not to hear you two." Geralt raised his head from the book and glanced at the Sylvan, who was still stubbornly squeaking on a peculiar set of pipes made from reeds of various lengths. "I hear you. The whole neighborhood hears you." "Dovlieses, not neighborhood." Tork put his pipes aside. "A desert, that's what it is. A wilderness, a shithole. I miss my hemp." "He misses his hemp," laughed Dandelion, carefully turning the delicately engraved lute pegs. "You should have sat in the thicket, quiet as a dormouse, instead of scaring girls, destroying dikes and sullying the well. I think you're going to be more careful now and give up your tricks, Tork?" "I like tricks," declared the Sylvan, baring his teeth, "and I can't imagine life without them. But have it your way. I promise to be more careful on new territory. I'll be more restrained." The night was cloudy and windy. The gale beat down the reeds and rustled in the branches of the bushes surrounding their camp. Dandelion threw some dry twigs into the fire. Tork wriggled around on his makeshift bed, swiping mosquitoes away with his tail. A fish leapt in the lake with a splash. "I'll describe our whole expedition to the edge of the world in a ballad," declared Dandelion. "And I'll describe you in it too, Tork." "Don't think you'll get away with it," growled the Sylvan. "I'll write a ballad too then and describe you, but in such a way as you won't be able to show your face in decent company for 12 years. So watch out. Geralt?" "What?" "Have you read anything interesting in that book which you so disgracefully wheedled out of those freemen?" "I have." "So read it to us before the fire burns out." "Yes." Dandelion strummed the melodious strings of Torville's lute. "Read us something, Geralt." The Witcher leaned on his elbow, edging the volume closer to the fire. "Glimpsed she may be," he began. "During the time of summer, from the days of May and June to the days of October, but most oft this haps on the fest of the scythe, which ancients would call Lammas, she revealeth herself as the fair-haired lady, in flowers all, and all that liveth followeth her path and clingeth to her, as one plant or beast. Hence her name is Lethia. Ancients call her Danamebi, and venerate her greatly. Even the bearded, albeit in mountains, not on fields they dwell, respect and call her Blumenmegde." "Danamebi," muttered Dandelion. "Danamebi, the lady of the fields. Whence Lethia treads the earth blossometh and bringeth forth, and abundantly doth each creature breed, such is her might. All nations to her offer sacrifice of harvest, in vain hope their field not another's will by Lifia visited be. Because it is also said that there cometh a day at end when Lifia will come to settle among that tribe which above all others will rise. But these be mere women-folk tales, because, forsooth, the wise do say that Lifia loveth but one land, and that which groweth on it, and liveth alike with no difference, be it the smallest of common apple trees, or the most wretched of insects. And all nations are no more to her than that thinnest of trees, because, forsooth, they too will be gone, and new different tribes will follow. But Lithia eternal is, was, and ever shall be, until the end of time. Until the end of time, sang the troubadour and strummed his lute. Torque joined in with a high trill on his reed pipes. Hail, lady of the fields, for the harvest, for the flowers in Dol Blathana, but also for the hide of the undersigned, which you saved from being riddled with arrows. Do you know what? Moved on for a while. I'm going to tell you something. He stopped playing, hugged the lute like a child, and grew sad. I don't think I'll mention the elves and the difficulties they've got to struggle with in the ballad. There'll be no shortage of scum wanting to go into the mountains. Why hasten the... The troubadour grew silent. Go on, finish, said Torque bitterly. You wanted to say, hasten what can't be avoided. The inevitable. Let's not talk about it, interrupted Geralt. Why talk about it? Words aren't necessary. Follow Leal's example. She spoke to the elf telepathically, muttered the bard. I sensed it. I'm right, aren't I, Geralt? After all, you can sense communication like that. Did you understand what she was getting across to the elf? Some of it. What was she talking about? Hope, that things renew themselves and won't stop doing so. Is that all? That was enough. Geralt. Lila lives in the village among people. Do you think that she'll stay with them? Here, in Dol Blathana? Maybe, if what? If people prove worthy of it, if the edge of the world remains the edge of the world, if we respect the boundaries. But enough of this talk, boys. Time to sleep. True. It's nearly midnight. The fire's burning out. I'll sit up for a little while yet. I've always found it easiest to invent rhymes beside a dying fire. And I need a title for my ballad. A nice title. Maybe The Edge of the World? Banal, snorted the poet. Even if it really is the edge, it's got to be described differently, metaphorically. I take it you know what a metaphor is, Geralt? Let me think. Where? Bloody hell, where? Good night, said the devil. Thank you for listening to The Last Wish Part 5. If you're enjoying this journey through the Witcher universe, make sure to subscribe, share your thoughts, and stay tuned. More parts are on the way. Until next time, keep your silver sharp and your answers sharp.